Welcome to the podcast. It's Monday. We're talking NASCAR. We got Rod Mullins here on the Zoom, and we're going to talk about wow, what a horrible day at Watkins Glen for most of the playoff field. Only two guys in the playoff chase among the top 10 drivers. As you know, the rest of the field, the guys who didn't make the playoffs, dominated the day. What was going on, Rod? Why were the playoff guys having so much trouble?
I think this is karma. I think this is a lot of things about karma and the way things are going. And it's one of those things too. You can't really play safe and expect to try to make it to the next step of the playoffs. And when I say that, I'm kind of hinting at Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin kind of, I feel like, in a way, at Atlanta last week, sandbagged. He just didn't want to get caught up in anything, ran in the middle of the pack, and he still had trouble. And I don't know if that's his same strategy this time around with Watkins Glen or not, but I mean, first incident of the race, we have him. He gets knocked out. He goes and he's able to get back on his way and stuff until he gets knocked out of it there at about midway and ends up finishing with a pretty, depressing point in the standings. He is now on the bubble. He's on that fringe of that bubble right now of the 12. If the cutoff was today, he is in essence, he is in quicksand and he's not going to get himself out unless somebody throws a lifeline to him. And he's going to have a lifeline coming up this week at Bristol.
And that's Denny Hamlin after getting penalized points for that engine issue.
Yep.
That's what put him in this situation
Mhm.
too. So, I mean, this is something you hear said a lot about athletes in contact sports. And I, certainly put NASCAR as a contact sport with all the stuff going on the tracks, but football players too. Boy, you don't go out and play careful. If you go out and play careful, you might as well not even be out there because you're not, not only are you going to make it so that you're not going to be competitive, but you can get yourself injured too if you're too
Oh,
careful
yeah.
in these. So on the other end, overtime, Chris Buescher, Shane Van Gisbergen dueling it out. Van Gisbergen, we know, will be getting a full-time ride next year. So, and we know he does well. Obviously won the road course race last year in Chicago, and this being a special track at Watkins Glen, we see what his future might be like. Being competitive in these kind of races.
Yeah. The thing that he hasn't quite got the hang of yet is the oval thing. And I believe, he's getting there. And I didn't know it until yesterday, but Marcos Ambrose, who ran some for Richard Petty back early 2000s and so forth, and then he went back to Australia. He come over here and he won at Watkins Glen. He's been a little bit of an advisor to Shane Van Gisbergen. He and his wife have now made the transition. They have moved over here to America. And so now the big thing is him trying to perfect his driving style on the oval. Now, it'll be interesting. We'll see how he does when it gets to Roval time, if he is entered in for the Roval and everything coming up here at about middle of October. But yeah, he's going to have a new ride. He's going to have a ride next year with Trackhouse. He's going to have the 88 number on his car. And so there it is. He's pretty much set, but he's out there to show some people he's not just a flash in the pan like he was at the Chicago race last year. And he's won one or two Xfinity races right now in the last couple of weeks. So he's still got some contention about him, and I wouldn't rule him out, and definitely didn't rule him out yesterday. I thought he had the race won until Chris Buescher just suddenly came back and won this race. And I have to say this about the whole playoff aspect. If some of these teams and some people thought that getting eliminated from the playoffs was going to be one of those things of where you pack up all your stuff, you go back to North Carolina or wherever, and you just say, that's it. We're not going to run anymore for the rest of the season. That's the worst thing you can do. And these guys have something to prove. Chris Buescher at Darlington, he was just brokenhearted. He was just like, you do everything you can to try to make the playoffs. And then lo and behold, here it is, bad luck hits us. And this is where we're at. That didn't stop him from going and winning this race yesterday. It was a very clean race. Nothing nasty about the hits or the slams or anything like that or the rubbing. Shane Van Gisbergen just said he was a little bit sick over it because, he thought he had the race there and he thought he was going to be able to win it. But in the end, Chris Buescher, he praised Shane Van Gisbergen on the driving and stuff and said he raced me clean, but we just had a good race, a good last lap duel.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. We talk about this a lot. The NASCAR playoffs are so unique.
Mhm.
When in the ball sports, uh, if you're out of the playoffs, you're out of the playoffs. You're not involved in the participation in the events anymore. But in NASCAR, the non-playoff contenders are still out there, and they were dominant yesterday. 8 of the top 10
Yeah.
were non-playoff guys. Who had good runs yesterday?
Well, some other people that had good runs, we'll talk about it. You're talking about these guys that not in the playoffs, but are still there. Carson Hocevar, who raced really well yesterday. You also had Ryan Preece in there. You had Corey LaJoy, who had a great run yesterday. Austin Cindric, he improved his standing a little bit in the playoffs. Here's another one for you. Chase Briscoe, he was kind of hovering back and forth. He was one of the last guys to get into the playoffs on his win at Darlington, and now he's kind of improved his stock a little bit there toward going into Bristol this coming weekend. But, here's the thing. Briscoe and Cindric were the only two playoff drivers to finish them in the top 10, as opposed to the 12 of the 16 there that was supposed to be there in contention there at the race. Denny Hamlin, we've already talked about. That's one of the things that's kind of got people concerned. Kyle Larson did not have a good race. Brad Keselowski ran well there for a little while, but it did not happen for him yesterday either. And as I'm just looking through some of these, Tyler Reddick had bad luck. Christopher Bell, Chase Elliott, and William Byron. I don't know if you saw the wreck there toward the end of it of William Byron going up over top of Brad Keselowski. Very lucky that the tire and did not sit down right on top of the driver's part there at the net. That could have made it really tough, and he could have got burned. Being up underneath there, the heat of the temperature of the car, it could have burned him. But he kind of avoided that. And then here we've got to talk about the other Trackhouse driver, Daniel Suarez. He was rated up there at the top along with Ross Chastain, who had the pole. And, they ended up finishing, I should say, Suarez finished in the top 15 altogether, but it wasn't as good a day for Ross Chastain as he was hoping it would be.
Well, Ron, we know you're going to be at Bristol this coming weekend, so we're looking forward to the coverage of that. And we thank you in the meantime for your insight, your knowledge, and we'll look forward to your coverage from the upcoming weekend.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks.